On today's final edition of Australian Open Shot Clock with PSN tennis editor and former top 15 player in the world, Andrea Leand, a new Grand Slam champ will be crowned on the women's side as Simona Halep won a classic match against Angelique Kerber and will face Caroline Wozniacki early tomorrow morning as the top two players in the world battle down under. While on the men's side, excuse me while I yawn, Roger Federer is a day away from his sixth Australian Open crown when he faces Marin Cilic in a Wimbledon final rematch. That and much more as Andrea Leand's Australian Open Shot Clock on the Prime Sports Radio Network starts now. Is in bloom, the transmissions will resume. All right, I'm Greg DePalma. Welcome back to Andrea Leand's Australian Open Shot Clock for this Friday, the 26th of January, 2018. And Andrea, we spoke about how hard it would be yesterday, actually a couple of days ago on our last show, for Simona Halep to beat Kerber. And if she could, the way Kerber had been playing this season, it would be a huge accomplishment and worthy of a Grand Slam champ, but she still has one more match to go. So I got to ask you what the difference was in Halep beating Kerber. She dug deeper than we've ever seen her dig before. Everyone talking about Halep's 50 winners as the main reason why she was able to get it done. But as you've been pointing out on other shows, you have mentioned that Halep needed to go to a topspin shot and avoid the hard, fast ones, and that seemed to be the remedy right there.
Well, yes, you got to put these 50 winners in context. As I said to someone in her camp, I hope she doesn't walk into the final and think she's, Paul Bunyan and is going to blow down trees, and just hit these hard, flat slap shots and
Sure.
try and knock someone off court without playing the point, without working the ball, without moving the opponent. Because this is not, a Serena or a Muguruza or a Sharapova or Venus where they have that physical prowess, that innate muscle to be able to hit a winner from anywhere on court at will. This is someone who at 5'6" has to really work the point, Greg, and has to be patient. And dare I say, I think the difference in this match from her previous encounter to Kerber, which I watched, is that Halep was actually more patient, and she was willing to work the point. She was able to move the ball, and she was showing a diversity in this topspin. And we said topspin because she needed to go back to what she fundamentally, technically was able to do. She's not a flat hitter. She doesn't really take the ball on the rise. It's a different technical approach to the shot. And so she had to go back to that European clay court topspin, and she did it so beautifully. I mean, she hit the high topspin against Kerber, out of Kerber's power zone, didn't allow Kerber to lock and shoot. And that high topspin really threw Kerber off, and she did it in the beginning. Kerber wasn't expecting it. We said in the match, Halep was going to have to give Kerber a different look on every ball. She couldn't get her into a rhythm and cross-court patterns and so forth that Kerber absolutely thrives on. She had to do something different and keep Kerber off balance. And she did that beautifully. And with the topspin that she has so naturally, she could hit the short angle topspins and take Kerber off. She also, Greg, and this has been, I think, the key to the aggressiveness in Halep, is able to now to accelerate that racket head and get that fast topspin. And when you hit that fast topspin into the corners, it doesn't just bounce and sit up, it ricochets out, and it draws the opponent off court, and it gives Halep the opportunity then to take the short response or the defensive response and either hit the swing volley or the short ball for the winner, and that's where we saw the 50 winners. Now, of course, it's splitting hairs, Greg. She had 50 winners, 50 unforced errors, and had, being down match points to Kerber, had she lost the match, everyone would be saying, oh gosh, they'd be looking at the 50 unforced errors.
Sure.
But we're going to say, you know what? Halep showed maturity out there, because I have to also give Kerber a lot of credit, Greg. Everyone's making, this match about Halep. She's either playing well or she's kind of lost a little will. And I disagree. I think that Halep came out there playing beautiful tennis, mixing up the pace, threw Angie off. Angie did not post for 5 games because she didn't know what to do. I watched Angie's warm-up. She did look a little slow. She obviously, had very little physically in the reserve. She's such a sturdy player, sturdy physical player that she, was able to, find the resource to play the match eventually. But I saw in the warm-up she did look tired. She looked slow. Let's face it, she's had 3 long weeks. She played Hopman Cup. She played, one Sydney. Now, of course, in retrospect, she said, well, maybe I shouldn't have, played Sydney, but winning that title really gave me a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
So I think that when you look at this, you had both players who were undefeated going into the match for the year. And to me, this was about Angie really stepping up after losing the first 5 games in 10 minutes. And she said, you know what? I see you, and I'm going to pick up my level and see what you got. And I thought what the most interesting thing in the whole match was is Halep said, I'm right there with you, and I'm going to raise my level now. So it's like a chess game to see, who could come up with the tactic, who could take control. And I really thought it was an incredible match, and I give both women credit.
Yeah, we talked last year when that Federer Kyrgios match about match of the year, and it went all throughout the year. That was the match of the year, the one which was actually pretty early in the year. And I think we might say the same thing about this match. It was that good. We might be looking, when we have our awards show next year, we might look back and say the match of the year was the semifinal match between Kerber and Halep, because that's how good it was. And I don't think about, sure, we can go in a whole different bunch of reasons why one lost, one won. But the fact is both players played so well. This is what happens. Somebody's going to win. Somebody's going to lose. I don't think we should be looking for excuses.
Well, what I liked about it was they were able to think their way out of a problem and find a new solution. And boy, this is so great to see Halep do that. But she had so many options with the topspin, and of course the serve. She had 6 aces. Angie no aces. This is something she is going to work on, and the time off she has now. She's got to focus on the serve. There's no reason. She's a sturdy competitor athlete. She should be able to get a little bit more mile per hours on that serve and make it a little bit more of a weapon. I don't think she served very well in the match. Halep definitely was able to pick up the serve. But, I give them both credit, Greg, because, a lot of the players are saying, let's give the opponent some credit when they play Halep. This is not always just about Halep. The opponent steps up to the plate. Kerber stepped up to the plate when she was down 5 love. Let me tell you something. When you lose 5 games in 10 minutes, Kerber had a choice. She could say, look, I can wave the white flag. I've had an incredible run. Everyone will understand that I'm too tired. Or I can really dig deep and really find answers to what Halep's doing. And she did that. So we give her credit and we give Halep credit because, as you said, it wasn't that it was just like it was not a perfect match.
No.
And there were mistakes made, but it was interesting to see how they were able to deal with that and find another way.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly like we had great tennis all throughout the match, but it was the fact that there was so much drama in the match. Right. I mean, I remember that what was it? The break point shot by Kerber. I think it was the backhand winner that won the game. I don't know if that won the set as well, but that incredible point was one of the best points I've ever seen, in women's tennis. I mean, it was incredible, the shot making.
That really is about will. And we've talked about how stubborn Angie can be. When she digs in her feet and she's not going to lose, you see the will. And a lot of people talk about Halep, attitude. I don't think that's attitude. I think that was building will. And now we see the will in Halep out there, that she dug deep. And these points, as you said, you had one of the most willful competitors out there, and they were just refusing to lose the point. And it was just remarkable in the court coverage. I do think, obviously, Halep is in, if you can even say this, because again, we're splitting hairs, is in better shape than Angie. She did have more in the tank, and we credit that for the fact she had such a great off season, had the team in Romania. Of course, she was getting so many accolades after being the first Romanian to become number 1 in the world that she had a lot of things off court to do, but the training off season was phenomenal. She came into this healthy, rested. She won the tune-up event in China. And although she had the ankle injury, the fact that she was in such great shape coming into the tournament, I think helped her compensate for that while the ankle healed in what has now been 2 weeks. So she's having no trouble moving. And I think that this is going to be a real key in helping her in the final.
Yeah, and now she takes on Wozniacki, and now she's the favorite to win this match. I think there are a lot of people that are expecting Halep to win this match. But here's the problem, though. We said the same thing about Halep. We all thought early on in the French Open, oh, that's over. And how often, we get these players that, as a former player, how difficult it can be to get over the hump, especially when you're supposed to do it. I know she's not a heavy favorite, but she is the favorite to beat Wozniacki. And both players have never won a slam before, but to me, I got to believe Halep's the one with more pressure.
Well, Well, Halep is definitely the favorite. I mean, most people are picking Halep to win primarily because Caroline Wozniacki, who has had a pretty easy draw of it, relatively so to the rest of the players, she hasn't really had to face any top player to get to the final. She beat Merton very, handily. Merton's a fine player. She has maximized all her assets. I give her enormous credit for getting to her first semifinal Grand Slam.
Sure.
Of course, working in the Kim Clijsters Academy under the tutelage of Kim has been an enormous help for her, and Justine Henin as well, her compatriots. It's so interesting when you're around these great stars by osmosis. You just are so inspired that you actually are able to raise your game levels beyond what you ever expected. And I think Mertens has done a great job of that. She's won a lot. She's won the smaller events and like Hobart, but on the big stage, Caroline just had too much. She was the heavyweight champion. She had too much. She was, wily. She was savvy. She was smart. And I think that Caroline really depends on these psychological edges at this point, because at 27 years old, which is not old really, but she's been on tour for about 10 years. Halep is 26, been on tour as well. They're both veterans. But, Caroline is fast. She's one of the most phenomenal athletes you'll ever see. We see her throwing the football and running the marathon. So she's incredibly athletic, but she's not as fast as she was at 23. And I don't think she has the reserve, the physical reserve, as she did when she first came on tour. She was a lot bigger then. She had a lot more reserve to her. And to me, it's really a question of how she's able to recover and rebound for this final, and what is just as an important occasion for her, Greg. I mean,
sure.
Let's face it, when she brings up the fact she still was stinging from losing to Li Na in the semifinals, 7 or so years ago, this is someone who, despite the fact she says, oh, I'm relaxed and I'm with my fiance and I'm just enjoying life and enjoying everything, I don't buy this at all. Caroline plays her best when she's feisty and when she has edge. And we saw that after the breakup with Rory, and we saw that in various different situations, including in this tournament when she had the run-in with the umpire, which, by the way, she was totally correct about, I think. But she had the run-in, and she used that situation to funnel this energy into having an edge and having a purpose. And when she is a little bit more feisty, she has more purpose out there, and she becomes more aggressive. And so this is the Caroline that's going to be needed in the final. We go back to their last meeting, though, Greg, and that was in Singapore, and this is where everyone was shaking their head. It was very clear that, as we've talked about, sometimes you can have all the geniuses on your team. They can be the greatest people in the history of life, but it has to be the player to really find the answers from within, to find that belief from within. And when we saw Halep go back to Romania after the Open, after the disappointing loss to Sharapova, I remember seeing her at the Open after that, and everyone hates losing to Maria. And they're like in mourning the day after they lose to Maria because no one can stand it. And there was Halep, though, and she was in the player lounge, and she's talking to Kim, and Virginia Rizich, her mentors, really encouraging her to get out and have these conversations with these former greats. And, so again, sometimes it's random conversation, whether it's Caroline with McEnroe or Serena. Sometimes it's the random comment. And I think it was important for Halep to go on that individual journey, to go back, to work on what Darren told her to work on, and then go to Beijing and grab that number one ranking. But we saw her come into Singapore. She used the top spin in Beijing. She gets to Singapore, and it's the hard, flat slap shots. And Caroline, I have to tell you, Greg, you could just see that little smirk when she was impressed, and they asked her about Halep. And she said, and it's in the transcript, well, isn't she hitting hard and flat now? And so this is Christmas bells to Caroline. This was absolute Christmas bells. Beat her 0-2. It was, to me, shocking, quite frankly. And Halep walked in eventually at the end of the thing after she lost to Svitolina and said, well, they asked her why she lost, and she said, well, I lost because, quote, unquote, the court wasn't fast enough and I couldn't hit enough winners. So there was clearly an issue over how to process being aggressive and how she was going to do it. And sometimes it doesn't matter how great and how genius and how right everyone is. Halep has to find those answers from within. And what we see now is she has, with the topspin, she has learned how to use it in various ways, and she's going to need to do that against Caroline. She's going to have to work the point. She cannot go out there as she did in Singapore and hit these slap shots, because Caroline will feed off it and she will love it. And so it's going to be interesting to see how does Halep approach this final, and what reserve does Caroline have in the tank.
Yeah, because I think we look at this as, if you're trying to make a prediction on this one, the way I would look at it is, if I think you were trying to predict whether Simona is going to play mentally. She's going to be as mentally tough as she's been throughout this tournament, and if she is, she's got the game to win this thing over Caroline and finally break through. But if she doesn't, if something all of a sudden it's just too big, the stage is too big, and something happens early in the match that she's not prepared for, and all of a sudden she starts feeling the pressure, then she's going to lose. But I mean, I think if she
No, I really don't think this is about I think these girls have proven that they can handle pressure, especially coming back from match points down. I think they've proven that they have belief, and they have both proved. Let me tell you, these are two stubborn people. You want to talk about difficulty in processing doing something else? It's Caroline. I mean, it's taken her 2 years to all of a sudden start playing more aggressively. I mean, I cannot tell you. I mean, both of these women have had all the geniuses, all the coaches. They've both had all the help in the world. But it really has taken both of them to really find that type of message within, and to really feel like they, when can you tell a 20-something-year-old what to do and give them directives? 20-something-year-olds, and they're only 26. I think we forget because they're such veterans how young they really are.
Sure.
And they have to feel like they found their own answers. And that goes for Caroline. I mean, I can't tell you the number of coaches who have said to me, they've tried to do this, tried to do that. Dad doesn't want her making unforced errors. Dad wants her to be, run balls down and wear opponents out. And so to see Caroline now playing this aggressively is just terrific. And we saw that in the WTA finals, which is why she won it. She herself has said now it's a combination of defense, offense, and that is the key. Neither one of these players is going to blow someone off the court. It's a matter of having the patience to work the ball, to move the opponent, and to wait for the right shot to go for it. And to me, for Caroline, though, the serve is going to be a big factor in this match, as it was in Singapore. The court was slower in Singapore than it is in Australia. So the serve, her first serve especially, is going to be really essential because I do think she is physically tired. She's going to need those free points. She's going to need to have those big serves to try and start the point off in control. And it'll be interesting to see how, if she serves better than Angie. I think she actually does have a better serve than Angie. That is what we're going to be looking for in this match. These girls have proven themselves in my book.
Sure.
It's an old story now. They have the will, they have the maturity, and now it's a question of how they execute out there and do what they need to do.
All right. Well, I mean, if that's the case, then I think Halep's going to win. So I think it's her
time.
Well,
I think most people pick Halep. The only thing I'm also going to give Caroline is I believe, because she has a 4-2 head-to-head, and she's won the last 3 meetings, I think that Caroline feels she has a psychological edge over Halep. And it's my belief that I think Caroline thinks that she is smarter than Simona.
Okay.
And that she's a quicker thinker than Simona on court, and that she can adjust faster. And I think this, look, psychological edges are intangible. You really can't point your finger on it. It's just one of these things between two people. And I do believe that Caroline thinks she has a psychological edge with Simona, and she likes playing Simona, quite frankly. Because, let me tell you something. I think it would have been a much tougher match for Caroline to face Kerber. Even if Kerber had won that semifinal, Caroline would have immediately become number 1 in the world. So, there's one reason Caroline could have cheered for her, but I think that Caroline definitely has more confidence playing Simona than Kerber. So, to me, we'll see if that psychological edge comes into play. We'll see if there are some mind games going on out there, because Caroline is good at that. But I agree with you. Obviously this match is on Simona's racket, and it's Simona's match to win.
Now, is there any particular reason, though, why? I mean, is your point that regarding why Caroline has had success against Simona because you believe Caroline? It's not usually just. I mean, it shouldn't really just be about somebody's got somebody else's number. You think there's a reason for it. You actually think Caroline has been smarter than Simona on the court?
Well, I'm not saying smarter. I think Caroline thinks she's smarter than Simona. I do think, however, Caroline is a quicker thinker on the court than Simona. And I think sometimes it's misinterpreted with Simona. For instance, when Kerber started to come back in that match and Halep seemed to freeze a little bit, they thought, she's lost will. No, I don't think it's that she's kind of lost the path. I think it's because it takes her a little bit longer to figure out what she's going to do next.
Got it.
Whereas Caroline is a little bit of a quicker thinker, and she moves on to the next thing a little bit faster. So, I think that, look, both women are experienced. They're veterans. I mean, you look at these records. Caroline's has 43 Grand Slam appearances, Halep 31, which is an interesting disparity, though. That's, 12 is a big deal when they're only 1 year apart. So Caroline's had enormous experience, and she's in all these kind of leaderboard lists they give out. Eighth as of active players with Grand Slam wins, 106 to 42. This is her 52nd final. Halp's 29th. But when you get to numbers like that, Greg, the bottom line is they both have enough experience. And to me, their journeys have been remarkable in that I give them huge credit for getting to this point. To have two players who've never won a Grand Slam title, both ranked number one in the world, though, it's a big, big occasion, and it's a big grab there for both of them. So, I think that in itself is going to provide a dynamic and excitement to the match and an edge to the match that we haven't seen.
Yeah, and I also think what really helps is it makes this exciting and a great matchup is it does appear that both players are playing as good as they've ever played before. They're on top of their games. This is it. This is kind of like what we were talking about with the Kerber-Hallett matches.
Well, and I'm not even sure. I think also what both players have learned in this tournament is that they don't have to play their best tennis to win. Because I think, quite frankly, I don't think Hallett played very well against Lauren Davis. I don't think Caroline played very well against Jana Fett. I think that they really were not playing their best tennis, but they found a way to win. And this, to me, is the most impressive. And that goes back to the thinking and the belief and the will that they know that they can win even if they're not playing their best. And I don't, on an occasion like this, when there's so much pressure and there's so much expectation, how can you expect them to play their best? And so, to me, it's about who is going to play, who is going to be able to find a way to win, even if they're not playing, they're executing as well as they would like.
Okay. On the men's side, yes, there is a men's final, and we're getting Cilic and Federer again. We certainly hope it's a lot better than their last final matchup, but I don't know. First, we'll start off with Roger. A very disappointing situation, early in the morning because you have the one men's semifinal, the Cilic one, and the two women's semifinals, which was on Thursday morning. And then this morning we have the one men's semifinal, Roger. So that's kind of weird. But okay, whatever. So you've got the one men's semifinal, and we're hoping that we're going to get some really good match, and maybe 4 or 5 hours of entertainment if we're lucky. We get like an hour and change.
Yeah, well, there's been issues with the Australian Open this year, and obviously when the tournament's over, they'll go back to the drawing board. The scheduling has obviously been one of them. We talked already about the fact they put these women's matches 2 out of 3 after 3 out of 5 men's at night, which is ridiculous. Women not getting on to nearly midnight. And now, of course, they took the risk of putting just one men's semi for the day, and of course Chung had blisters, and boy, these are huge blisters. He was getting injections into both feet for 10 days. He's been all kinds of podiatrists and doctors and trainers. Everyone's been working on the guy. We've talked about how sturdy his legs are, and then everyone forgot to think about the actual surface of the feet, and then so how ironic that ended up being his undoing, because look, he beat Sasha Zverev, he beat Novak Djokovic. And so now you have Roger Federer, and he simply, this injury was just simply too much, and he had to, obviously, as you mentioned, retire to Roger. And boy, what a easy ride Roger has had after what he said was not his best tennis against Berdych. And I was glad to hear him say that, because when I watched that beginning of the first set, I'm like, Roger is not sharp today. And so, again, we're going back to, how do you win when you're not playing your best tennis? The champions can do that. The Grand Slam champions can do that. And that's why I think it's neat we're going to see a first-time Grand Slam champion on the women's side. Because for Roger, the funny thing is everyone's been talking about, is Serena going to catch up with Margaret Court's record? Now they're talking about, is Roger going to catch up with Serena's record in Grand Slam titles?
Amazing.
Because he's making it look very easy. Look, he rushed Chung. He did everything he was supposed to do. That's one thing about Roger. He's so well prepared. He's so smart, and he just knows how to execute. He has that extraordinary talent and ability innate, but he's also been able to execute under a lot of pressure. Because let's face it, the pressure was on him. A lot of people actually thought Chung could win the match, and they didn't know he had these blisters, didn't know about all this.
Sure.
But and Chung will be someone. By the way, he's going to move up now into the top 30. We should also mention that Kerber moves to number 9 in the world, back up into the top 10. So it's interesting to see. We were hoping for a great match of a new gen. Next gen star versus the Grand Slam champion, but we didn't get it. And I think, does that hurt Roger going into the finals? No. I don't think so. Look, he knows Cilic. They've practiced together when they were on vacation a year ago, and as you mentioned, the Wimbledon final where it was Cilic who had some sort of blister issue and got very emotional in the center court, as we remember. But I think this is going to be a very calculated match. I think Roger knows Cilic very well, but Cilic is a very calculated competitor. He really, plays the percentages. Yes, he's got the big serve. He's got some weapons. He's a big guy. But to me, he's a percentage player. He's a smart, intelligent guy. He knows Roger, and he's beaten Roger. He won the 2014 U.S. Open, so he knows the feeling. Mm-hmm. But he's lost 7 out of 8 times to Roger, and that, talk about psychological edges, may just be a little bit much.
Yeah, I mean, look, we mentioned this a few days ago when we were talking about Cilic going up against Nadal, that, look, if Cilic, even though everybody wants to talk about Dimitrov and Kyrgios breaking through for a Grand Slam, the fact is that Cilic does have a Grand Slam, and if he wants more, if Roger and Rafa are going to be hanging around at optimum level for the next couple of years, he's going to have to up his game. So here you go. Here's your chance. Go ahead and go take it. And let's, even if Roger wins, I hope Marin Cilic makes this a match. I hope it's extended as long as possible. And I just hope that Marin Cilic has his best. He gives us his best. And you know what? I'd be very happy for him if he can actually pull it off. It'd be great for the sport.
Well, I'll tell you one thing Cilic can do. Now this match is on Roger's racket, no question about, because he has the agility, he has the quickness, he has the diversity in his game. He can come in, he can rush Cilic, he can move Cilic. He has a return of serve, obviously. He has his own serve. So, the idea, obviously, is to move Cilic and really just play his game. But if he doesn't come out sharp like he did against Berdych, Cilic is a veteran, and he knows how to exploit that. And we saw emotion in Cilic when he beat Edmund to get to this final. And we saw emotion in Cilic when he beat Nadal, even though Nadal was hobbled. And everyone was thinking, oh, God, we kissed poor Rafa. And it was Cilic, though, who still had, again, that will, that emotion. And you could see it. He wanted it so badly, he was not going to let Rafa off the hook. So this is a guy who, despite all the favoritism for Roger and St. Roger, he walks on water. Everything he does is perfect. Cilic is a guy who is not going to be fazed by it all. And if Roger does not come out there sharp in the beginning, I think Cilic absolutely can exploit that. So Roger's going to have his A game. This is not something he's just going to waltz through like he did at Wimbledon.
No.
He's going to have to play his best tennis to win, and I think he knows that. So it'll be a great match. We give some credit to Edmund. He lost to Cilic in the semis, but what a great run for him. Mm-hmm. He now moves up in the rankings as the top English player now on the computer because Andy Murray's been out. But I think that it'll be a good match, Greg. It was Australia Day when Chung retired to Roger, so at least the Australian fans had something to cheer about.
I hope.
Yeah. But I think that they're going to have a lot to really enjoy about this final because how many times are we going to see Roger Federer in a Grand Slam final at this stage? I mean, he's one of the oldest to ever reach a Grand Slam final, and so I think you just savor every moment, and thank goodness we have them.
All right. Now, a few other things before we put an end to the 2 weeks of our coverage for the Australian Open. By the way, Roger, one of the things we want to talk about before we let you go, he's going to be in an exhibition with Jack Sock, right, in San Francisco?
Yeah, and I think we're going to see more exhibitions. He's popping up at one on March 5th in San Francisco. Bill Gates, obviously, behind this one with Sock. We have the tiebreak 10 with the Williams sisters in New York City the very same day. They've announced that. Of course, we did say Serena, Venus, and Coco are going to lead the way for the U.S. and Fed Cup. It'll be Isner Aquari and Ryan Harrison and Stevie Johnson for the Men and Davis Cup. And so I think that we're going to see a lot more of these tiebreak 10 or exos because I think as these players are getting older, over 30, they're realizing, this is the type of venue that's better for their bodies. And, instead of going through the grind of playing a tournament. And, look, it's tough. Simona's supposed to be in Russia next week to play that title. She's not going to be able to do it. She needs to go home. She needs to rest and recuperate because what's important also for these players, especially as they, are in the finals of these and, really under all this duress physically, is that they take the time off. And that is so important. They don't crisscross the globe as she did last year. And we have Milanovic. Did we say in the beginning of the 2 weeks, you asked how she's over 15 in singles. How does she get her game back, her career back, play doubles? She won the title in Melbourne, Greg. She won the title with Babush, her former, partner from the a couple years ago. They won the title, beat the Russians, Vesnina and Makarova. What a great moment. Kiki, of course, in tears. She's very dramatic, but we are happy for her because she has to defend. She won the title in Russia last year, so she's got points coming off. She did move to 10 in the world, but she's got a lot of points coming off now, so a lot of pressure there. It'll be really, really good for her to have that Grand Slam doubles under her belt in giving her some confidence.
Oh, by the way, is the Fed Cup match going to be in Asheville, North Carolina?
Your territory, Asheville, North Carolina.
That's awesome.
Very, very excited. Get your credential there. Let's get there and see, because it'll be fun to see Serena back on court, because we've had obviously so much discussion. When you have players who have really had to maximize all their tools, and all their wiliness to really win titles, like Caroline, like Halep, and it'll be fun to see a power player come back who can just hit these incredible, extraordinary winners like Serena. And I know everyone's really happy to see her back. And so it's great. I think she's doing it the right way, very slowly in increments with these Fed Cup and then, of course, the exhibitions. And see how she does and see how she feels. I mean, that's the most important. You have to look at the big picture. She's a mom now. She's a mom now, and she has to think about her priorities. But no, I think that we're going to have a great final. I'm very excited. We had two. We have two of the most, the best-looking girls in pro sports. I mean, they're just such great personalities. They're so upbeat. They're so proactive in trying to really grow their careers and as people as well. So I'm very excited, and I'm glad that Roger is there, because whenever you have Roger in the final, it just makes everyone smile. He's just a guy that makes everyone feel great, because he just knows how to do everything in the right way. And I'm glad they also saluted Laver Cup at the Australian Open. The European team, of course, won, and Cilic was on that team, by the way. So he has a rapport with Cilic, Roger. So it'll be good to see how they put that aside and really play their best tennis.
All right, Andrea, sounds good. Next week we'll wrap it all up. We've enjoyed the 2 weeks talking about the Australian Open, and it comes to an end in the next, 24, 36 hours. But we'll be on air again early next week to wrap it all up and talk about everything else coming up in the next few weeks. We
can go back to talking about Ostapenko, my favorite player.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to talk about. A lot of other players that we can talk about.
That's for sure.
Including Ostapenko and much more. So, Angie, appreciate it. Great job for these 2 weeks, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Great. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. So that's Andrea Land. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in once again to Andrea Leand's Prime Sports Tennis Australian Open Shot Clock for 2018. We'll see you again next week for more tennis talk here on the Prime Sports Radio Network. Enjoy the tennis, everyone.